All right. Yay. I am here. I'm Martha Alter Hines, and I am here with Natasha Kealoha for a second time. And I'm so, so, so happy to be having this conversation. I already just know ahead of time that you're all gonna love this conversation because because you will. And I know that I will. So for those of you who do not know Natasha, Natasha was first introduced to me by Keone Hanalei, and many of you are familiar with him. Um, and Natasha, how do I even sum it up? Well, okay, so Natasha is a wonderful human and an astrologer and someone who incorporates perspectives on astrology that I would say are help me to open up to all kinds of facets of my own being and to our relationship with the stars and just the cosmos in general. And among other things, Natasha brings in her Polynesian ancestry and connections to our world and our cosmos from that perspective as well as, I mean, you have such a deep and beautiful connection with your own soul, I would say primarily, right? And then your ancestry is part of what comes through that makes it so much richer and more beautiful to listen to on so many levels. So, yes, I could say many, many, many things, but I think that is enough for this minute. And just thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to dive in with you today, and thank you so much for the invitation to be back in conversation with you. I deeply respect your work and admire you as an amazing human. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be here today.
Aw, yay. Yeah, and so people, if you have not seen the first conversation that Natasha and I did last fall, I highly recommend it. We were talking about some themes that I think will probably weave back in here. We were
Mhm.
focusing on the part of the sky with where the Milky Way, well, the Great Rift of the Milky Way is, and we're going to be coming back to, I think, deepen that conversation in new ways as well. Um, and yeah, and again, Natasha brings in some perspectives that probably we haven't heard of before, or I certainly haven't. And as we were talking even before recording, I'm going, this, oh my goodness, and that, and oh my, wait a minute, what? You know, so yes, so you have some things that are really speaking to you, calling to you, and go for it.
All right. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for that introduction. Yes, I'm really excited to talk about a certain asteroid goddess, or two of them today. But the one that really called to me has been calling to me since January of this year. And when certain like asteroid goddesses or like just goddess energy or archetypes call my name and keep, you know, calling my focus, I'm like, okay, there's something there. And so this conversation, your invitation to meet again and have this conversation really gave me the space to like, okay, sit down and see why this particular asteroid has been coming into my consciousness. And so the goddess asteroid that we're going to be talking about today is Mnemosyne or Mnemosyne. I just call it, sorry if I'm slaughtering that name, but I've called her Mnemosyne, and she is the Titan goddess of memory. And I became aware of her back pretty early on when I started to deep dive into my own chart and just kind of looking at different asteroid goddesses, just kind of charting them at random, seeing what comes up. And Mnemosyne always kind of stuck out to me because of her association with memory. And I was really on my own journey of remembrance at that time. And so I think that's why she kind of just stuck with me. And then now seeing where she's at in the sky currently, and it's kind of starting to make all of this sense as to why she was knocking on my door, so to speak. So can I share my
Yeah.
screen? And okay,
Yeah.
okay. So let me share my screen. Okay, and then let me bring up a few slides today to kind of keep me on track because I can go off into all kinds of tangents. So this is just an introductory slide of who Mnemosyne is. So Mnemosyne is the Titan goddess of memory, as I already said. She's the goddess of memory, remembrance, language also, and time. She's also the mother of the nine muses, and Mnemosyne is deeply connected to language because She's connected to language because it was associated with the preservation of stories and myth through the memorization before there was writing. And I felt like this was really key because there's a lot of ancient cultures and cultures just that really was just all oral, it was all word of mouth. And I know in Polynesia that that was definitely a thing where there wasn't any written language, it was all through speaking and language. And so I felt like there was this connection between Mnemosyne and even the cultures of Polynesia as well. And I would even branch that out to the Pacific Islands just in general. And then also, I thought it was interesting because the term mnemonic device stems from her name. And a mnemonic device is, quote, a technique a person can use to help them improve their ability to remember something. It's a technique to help your brain better encode and recall important information. And that is a definition from www.uc.edu. And for me, this was really exciting to me because I felt like because she's associated with this memory recall device, that she's not only just the keeper and holder of memory, she also activates our memories and to help us recall remembrance. And I started to feel into the mnemonic device. So mnemonic devices, like in school, I remember I think the one that we learned when I was like in elementary school was like PEMDAS, like please excuse me, dear Aunt Sally. Like it was like telling you how to the order in which to solve an equation. But then I started to feel and I was like, I feel like there can be spiritual mnemonic devices where something comes into your life like a synchronicity or a person that has like some information. It starts to help your memory start to come alive. And so I started to feel into that. And for me, one of those things for me has been tattooing or tatau. And tatau in Samoan culture and also Polynesia has been, it's deeply sacred, it's deeply revered. And so people, so males and females have their own different types of tatau that they receive when they are reaching like the next stage in their evolution. So it's like basically a rite of passage that you receive when you come out of boyhood. You receive a certain tattoo. If you're a woman, you receive a certain tattoo. And so it's these tatau for me, I feel like is helping Polynesians or Samoans to remember their origins, remember their family, remember their connection to source and nature and themselves and all of that. So it's found in tattooing. So I've had my own deep sacred relationship with tattooing. I have tattoos all over my body. And I realized that a lot of my tattoos are actually prophetic. So I'd get something, it all comes to me in a vision. And then either months later or years later, it starts to come true and unfold as like actual things in my life. So that's kind of how I would describe like a spiritual mnemonic device, how Mnemosyne can kind of come in and help us wake up and remember. Okay. Going to the next slide. So there isn't like a specific myth that I've been really focusing on with Mnemosyne, but there is something that really caught my attention with her and her association to the rivers of the underworld. So in Hades, there's typically 5 rivers of the underworld and each have their own function. I'm so sorry if I pronounce any of these wrong, but the 5 main ones are the river Acheron, the river, I think that was supposed to be Phlegethon, the river Cocytus, the river Styx, which is a pretty popular one that a lot of people know about. It's the boundary between the living and the dead. But then it was the river Lethe that was really interesting to me because the river Lethe is the river of forgetfulness or the river of forgetting. And when I started to research the river Lethe, essentially the myths go, a lot of the variations include when souls pass on into the underworld, they're forced to drink from the river Lethe. And so with that, they forget all of the things that they experienced when they were humans. That can be on one side, they forget all of the pain and all of the, trauma that they've experienced, but they've also forgot about all their gifts and all their joy and all of those things. So they forget. And then they reincarnate. And then you reincarnate with no memory. And so then I started to research, and then I started to see there was some sources that started to say that there was actually a river Mnemosyne that ran parallel to the river Lethe. And the river Mnemosyne does the opposite of what the river Lethe does, where you drink from the river Lethe and you forget, but you drink from the river Mnemosyne, which is the river of memory, and you remember. And so I thought it was fascinating that the river Mnemosyne isn't even considered one of the major rivers of the underworld. So I thought it was a little almost ironic that the river Mnemosyne, the river of memory, was forgotten. That's even there mythologically. But then I also had this other kind of epiphany. So I was like, maybe there isn't any like there isn't a lot of talk about a river Mnemosyne, because what if the river Lethe and the river Mnemosyne are one and the same? And where we were taught to believe that you were forced to drink from the river Lethe and you're forced to forget, what if it actually comes down to your consent, which consent is not often like included in a lot of ancient, like a lot of mythology in the mainstream. Um, but essentially how I envisioned it was a soul passes on and they approach the river Lethe slash river Mnemosyne. And their choice here is to pick up a cup of water and either consent to remember or consent to forget. And
Mm.
so it's essentially the same river. It's all just down to your consent, which changes the frequency of the water that you drink.
Wow.
Yes. And I had this image that I thought was pretty, where it wasn't like two parallel rivers, it's this one and the same.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh.
Anything to add or anything to, should I
Oh,
keep
keep
going? Okay.
going.
Okay.
This image is exquisite, and yeah, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love this particular image too because you know, the moon in tarot too can be associated with, you know, the unconscious or the subconscious, and it's literally looks like the water's coming from the moon, where
You.
it's this invitation to either awaken or to forget. It's all comes down to our choice. Then.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a little bit of facts about the actual Mnemosyne asteroid. So the asteroid Mnemosyne was discovered on September 22nd, 1859, which I thought was really fascinating because the 1830s to like the 1900s was like almost like a systemic, almost like attack on indigenous cultures, where this is where we see the rise of residential schools in Canada and the US. We see the legal overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. We see the outlaw and the banning of the Hawaiian language or the Maori language. And so, and even like, I think it was even the indigenous Finnish language was also banned from being spoken in schools, and Swedish took over, I believe. And so we see this kind of dimming or forgetting or trying to deny these cultures that are actually deeply connected to their own language, to their own stories, and to their own culture, which don't heavily rely on written language. It's all through speaking and memorizing your stories. And then we start to see this kind of dimming, and it's almost like when Mnemosyne was discovered and she was named, it was like a remembrance point in the sky where it's like, okay, there might be this time of forgetting right now, but because we named and identified this particular asteroid and named it after Mnemosyne, then it's almost like we will be able to remember again, and it will start to, the things that we were trying to that were like trying to be squashed out will rise again. That's kind of how I was seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Mnemosyne is located between Mars and Jupiter. It takes Mnemosyne approximately 5.61 years to complete one orbit around the sun. And where she is right now, Mnemosyne is currently in tropical Scorpio, but she's in Libra in the living sky. So she's in the stars of Libra. And she will be in true sky Libra for most of the year due to her retrograde. And I thought it was interesting because the last time she was traveling through this part of the sky, she was now in was December 2019 to March 2020.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Where again there can be seen of this kind of like almost like this frequency of that kind of like, you know, we get put in crisis, or there's like this global thing that happens. Or we can even have personal things happen that kind of interfere with the awakening and the remembrance, and we start to have to go into survival mode. And but even if we are in that, there's still the support from Mnemosyne and still the support from just even the universe that you will come back into remembrance.
Well, I just want to just throw in, I
Yes.
just looked up my own Mnemosyne asteroid
Yes.
Italy. It is conjunct my sun. And And also Estrella is conjunct my
Mm.
sun, which maybe we'll weave in today because
Mhm.
Estrella is going to be in a similar part of the sky that Mnemosyne will be in later this year.
Oh.
But anyway, so I just think it's really fascinating that what
Mhm.
I do in my work is literally hold space for this time of great remembering.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
like the thing so my sun is in Pisces in my seventh house, conjunct Mnemosyne and
Wow.
Estrella. And my whole soul calling is to hold space for others, seventh
Mm.
house,
Mhm.
to remember themselves as the bridge of light and earth,
Wow.
Estrella.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. That's
and they're all
incredible.
like each of our own gifts, right? That
Yeah.
we are the remembering, literally.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
huh,
Yeah.
okay, so keep going.
Yeah, I love that you brought that in because, when I start to really quote unquote meet new, celestial bodies, I just start by meeting them in my own chart just to see if I can get a read on what it means even in my own life.
Yeah.
And so I highly recommend people if you want to look up your own Mnemosyne asteroid placement. I believe you can do it on astro.com.
Yeah,
And I think her number is 57, like asteroid number 57.
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. And so just enter in that and see what comes up. Because for me, Mnemosyne really can show where it's almost like a Chiron placement where some of our deepest wounding, but also some of our greatest healing lies. Can be where some of our deepest forgetting is, but also some of our deepest remembering.
Wow. Beautiful.
Just for fun, my Mnemosyne, my tropical chart is in my intercepted 12th house.
Fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of, wow, you really got to work for it. Dig into your unconscious and really face your fears in order to really remember
Mm,
why you're hearing what you're doing.
mm,
Yeah, yeah.
amazing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this actually so going back to where Mnemosyne is in the tropical chart, she's in tropical Scorpio, but she's also in true sky Libra. This really made me have this realization that like where Mnemosyne is in the Libra constellation, she's like aligned with the two stars that represent like the scales of balance in Libra. But if you actually go look up the meanings of those two stars, that actually I think means like the northern and southern claw of the
Yep.
scorpion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, wait. So Mnemosyne is actually reminding me that where we see these separate constellations in astrology, these are actually all deeply connected. They're
Yeah.
all like, connected. And also where she's at right now, too, is in the part of the sky where it goes Libra, Scorpius, and then Ophiuchus, which is the 13th missing sign on the ecliptic, and then goes Sagittarius, and then Capricorn. And so it's like she's kind of like just kind of unveiled the sky for me in a very interesting way, where again, where we have these ideas that, oh, this is a separate constellation, or this is a separate sign, this is a separate sign, this is a separate sign. They're all deeply interwoven. And then it also brought in the fact that we're in a time when our North Star is what it is. So our North Star currently is Polaris, and it's one of the stars in Ursa Minor. And Ursa Minor in ancient times was actually a part of the Draco constellation, and Draco's the dragon. And Ursa Minor was actually one of the dragon's wings. So
Exactly.
I was like, wow, so all of these constellations have kind of been separated. But now I feel it like our North Star is literally telling us that right now that we're almost like kind of in the time where the dragon gets to reconnect with its own wings, where there's no more separation between.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, so maybe then the scorpion or whatever is, however, whatever culture associates like, Scorpio, like it gets its entire being back too. So where we used to just kind of separate and divide these constellations that used to be really integrated. We're now in a time of, I feel like remembrance, and now we're remembering that everything is actually interconnected.
Exactly. And there's so much. Yeah. I mean, just say very briefly,
Yes,
we talked a lot about this before we had a long
you're
conversation
right. We
before
did.
we started recording, of course. But right. So some people know that in the star course that I just started a couple weeks ago, the first star we are with is Polaris. And so we've been talking a lot about Polaris and all kinds of things that maybe we'll weave in here or maybe we
Yes.
won't. But the whole connection of the whole fact that yes, it's currently in this moment of the 26,000 year precessional cycle that Polaris happens to be our pole
Mhm.
star right now.
Yes.
That is true. And it feels really significant that that is the star that is that it feels like it's not a meaningless thing
Mhm.
that Polaris, I feel like Polaris has some very specific role to play, and I don't quite consciously get it what that is yet, but maybe you'll help me figure this out. I feel like it cannot be a coincidence that Polaris is the pole star right now in this time of great remembering, right? But
Mhm.
and with another thing, what I feel with Polaris is that it's so important to remember that it is only one of our pole stars. We have all these other pole stars, and we have parts of the cosmos where there are many times in that 26,000 year cycle where we do not have a clear pole star.
Mhm.
So it's not only the stars, but it's also just that whole holding that circumpolar region
Mhm.
that holds the earth, right? Like
Yeah.
there's some, I feel like it's so important somehow to honor the whole, all of it
Yes.
together. And I could go on all these tangents, but so I also feel like so so a couple of the other pole stars that you have here on this image
Mhm.
really prominent are Thuban, which is part of Draco, and then
Mhm.
Vega, right,
Mhm.
which is kind of like on the other side of the circumpolar circle.
Yep.
And one thing I've been feeling when I'm feeling into all of it is that sure, in this minute, in this moment, Polaris happens to be our pole star, which is very significant. It's not insignificant to me.
Yeah.
And yet, also, it feels like it's somehow important to recognize all of the pole stars at the same time. So, like, even though Thuban, which is part of Draco, isn't right this minute our pole star, it was
Mhm.
a few thousand years ago during ancient Egypt, which I find
Yep.
also really significant.
Yeah.
But I feel like it still holds a signature or a energetic.
Mhm.
It's still in relate. Okay, for example, let me put it like this.
Yes.
So I'm a mom, so I have two kids, and my older one is about to turn, I mean, just turned 18, is about to go to college. Okay, so I'm
Mhm.
thinking ahead, like someday probably I will be a grandmother. Okay, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When you are the parent of a newborn, and then maybe someday you're a grandmother, so your newborn now is a parent,
Mhm. Mhm.
you're never not your baby's parent.
Mhm.
So like
Mhm.
if I think of if I imagine being Thuban,
Yes.
like the earth would never not be my baby. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, I
Right?
love
Like,
that. Oh,
and
that
then,
really got me in the heart. Yes.
yeah, it's like, well, they're not gonna, we don't lose our relationship to them, especially because we come back around. It comes right back
It's a
around.
cycle.
Right. Anyway,
Yeah.
that could go on and
Yeah.
on and on. So yeah,
Yeah.
so bringing in Draco to me instinctively feels super important, and I'm just
Yes.
so glad you're weaving these things.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yes.
yeah, thanks to Mnemosyne for the remembering and the reminding.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I feel like, in the time of great forgetting, or an age of forgetting, that we start to divide and we start to separate things. And we start to separate even the ages that were like the pole stars Polaris, and we're just going to separate that from the age where Thuban was.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, even though they're all part of the same constellation. They're all part of like this entire circumpolar star.
Right.
And I just feel like similar to you that it's not a coincidence that we're here at this time when Polaris is the pole star. And also I started to really feel into, because I'm really into zenith stars, and zenith stars mean like those stars that reach the highest point over certain islands or landmarks or cities or towns. And I essentially see it like in wayfinding, it's almost like breadcrumbs or like stepping stones to show you where landmarks are. And it's almost essentially weaving the stars into the land in, or even the ocean if it's the star reaches over certain points in the ocean. And
Yes.
so I feel like there is this, it's also not a coincidence that our land masses look the way that they do now too. So what does that even mean? because there's different zenith stars at different times. And there's like the land looks different on the earth too. So they had different zenith stars too. So it started to kind of like open up my mind in a whole other way, just working um, with the pole stars and Mnemosyne just kind of being in there and reminding us that it's all interconnected. And all of the times when, in the past, when the earth looked different, that's all an iteration or a lineage of her. And we're in this particular point on her evolutionary path.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And if it feels right at some point, maybe we can weave in what you brought up regarding that with Cygnus, et cetera. I don't know if it's,
Okay.
I don't want to overwhelm people, but
Yeah.
like there's so many cool things. Yes.
There is. Yeah. I mean, again, we went on like this amazing conversation before we even started
Yeah.
recording. But yeah, I would love to see if that, weaves its way in to
And
our
if it doesn't, we'll do that in another.
Yes, perfect. It's perfect. Yeah, so again, Mnemosyne's here to, remind us of the connection between it all. Yeah. Okay, and now this is this is something that has been completely inspired by Keone and a myth that he shares from his Hawaiian culture. And him sharing this myth completely, again, the things he shares just like shifts my perspective in like these really, really beautiful ways, but in a way that I feel it in my body. And so the myth that he shares is kind of like considered or connecting into the weighing of the heart. And it kind of is similar to the Egyptian myth of Ma'at, where she would measure your heart against a feather. And I think like I'm not super familiar with the myth, but I think if your heart is burdened or heavy or something, then you reincarnate. But if it's lighter than a feather, you're able to go into your next steps in the afterlife. And it's similar to that. And because there's this connection to weighing and scales, I started to see and incorporate this myth that Keone shares in my way that I view astrology and even just this entire part of the sky where Libra's at. And so, with no further ado, that was long story long. So, with his myth that he shares from his culture, essentially where instead of meeting Ma'at, you're actually meeting a star council and they're weighing your heart. And what they're weighing is authenticity of your heart. And so essentially, if you're emanating other people or you're trying to be something that you're not, when your heart gets weighed, they don't recognize you because that's not your true heart. So they say, I've seen this heart, where's yours?
My God.
And when he said that, when I heard him tell that for the first time, I got like chills all over my body. I was like, oh my God. Because I had been living in so much inauthenticity up until that point. When he shared that like rocked my world a little bit. Because now looking at how can we shift that where, now I start to be my true self. I start to uncover who I truly am. And the things that I do in like all aspects of my life are truly who come from me. It's truly who I am. Now then when the star council weighs my heart, then they recognize me because my heart is authentic. And so I started to see that and started to associate that with the Libra constellation. And I started to see that as a whole initiation in this part of the sky because if we start in the scales of Libra and we're weighing your authentic heart, then we go to Scorpius, and Scorpius is going down to the depths, really like going to that phoenix journey of burning away anything that is inauthentic, and what's left is your authenticity. And then you go into Ophiuchus, which is the missing constellation. So it's even Mnemosyne in this part of the sky, and in this kind of myth where it's all about authenticity, it's even bringing in, well, the authentic sky too, because Ophiuchus has been left out of tropical astrology. And so it's like this weaving back in of the authentic sky as well. And that's also where I started to work with Scorpius and Ophiuchus in my own way, where Scorpius really or Scorpio is really associated with death and rebirth in tropical astrology. But I honestly think that Scorpio is actually all about completions and death itself. It's like all about where we get to really face our uncomfortable, our discomfort around endings or completions or death. And then we move into Ophiuchus, which is all about resurrection because he's the healer that could bring things back from the dead. And so it's actually a fucus that holds the energy or the codes for resurrection and rebirth. So this
Hmm.
is where I feel like it kind of got overlaid on Scorpio a bit, where it's like we're trying to rush through the completion and get to the rebirth because like we can get really uncomfortable. But again, Scorpius only takes up, I think, like a very little bit on the ecliptic. So if we're thinking in terms of that, where the sun, I think, only takes 7 days to get through Scorpius, we don't have to spend that long in this portal of completions and death. But this is where we get to really face where we are uncomfortable in those aspects of completions and endings. And then we get to move into Ophiuchus around the rebirth. And then we go to Sagittarius, which is all about like, finding your own truth and like, having your own North Star. And then we go into Capricorn, which I felt like was a really important part of this whole initiation because it's the earth energy. And so this is where we get to embody it and get to really get into the self mastery of it. And then we get to Aquarius, which I thought was fascinating because Aquarius usually is the one that gets really associated with authenticity and uniqueness and nonconformity. And I was like, well, what if it actually starts in Libra? So
Hmm.
that by the time we reach Aquarius, we know more of who we actually are, and we get to actually be in the gift of it rather than playing or failing around and being like, I don't know, I think I'm being authentic. So I just really I started to view the sky in a different way. And so I thought it was interesting that Nemesyne's in this part of the sky so that it's almost like a catalyst to share. I started viewing the sky thanks to, Keone sharing that beautiful myth from sculpture.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And in Libra, of course, just to add in that
Mhm.
in Libra energy, we can get into such a people pleasing kind of way of being and even not notice when we're not being authentic. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's almost like you can get absorbed into the relationships that you're in, where you forget where you end and the other person begins. And so there's this kind of dissolution of boundaries that can happen in Shadow Libra. And also, Nemesis being there too. With Libra can be so other oriented. I always love to say that the most important relationship that Libra has is the one that it has with itself
Mm.
because so if you have any like really prominent Libra placements, I love just expressing that and offering that as kind of remembrance because honestly it's like the relationship you have with you informs all of the relationships you have outside of yourself.
Mm.
And so this is where we get to cultivate that relationship to self so that we can really collaborate in a really authentic way with people outside of ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. And then also I put the definition of authentic here too, which from dictionary.com, it says of undisputed origin, genuine. And I thought this was fascinating because Aquarius has been really on my mind, and Aquarius being considered, the sign that really holds uh, authenticity and originality. I was really feeling into originality and like because we're at this cusp of, the turning of the ages and we're really feeling Pisces and Aquarius at the same time. I really feel like a huge gift is originality, but I feel like the shadow part of that is to emanate or mimic or plagiarize and kind of get out of, the originality path, aspect of it all. But then I realized that the beginning part of originality is origin.
Mm-mm.
And so literally there's this connecting into your own origins, your own origin story. So your own, soul origin, but also really honoring your own lineage and your own origin from this body that you are currently in this
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yes, and that
Yeah.
ties into something I would love to say, but I want to
Yes.
make sure do you
Yeah. Did you want me to stop share for now? Or
sure, do you have
okay.
more? Do you
I
have more?
do.
Oh, you do. Yeah, do you want to
but
stop?
but yeah, I'll stop share. Yeah.
I'll just weave this in because it keeps coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I said this to you before we started
Yes.
recording. Um, and people who have watched my videos maybe already realize this. So earlier this week, I channeled a video called Anchor into the Light, something like that.
Mhm.
And so in the channeling, I had this humongous like download aha moment for myself, if
Yes.
for nobody else. Um, but I think other people also were like, wait a minute, what?
Mhm,
Okay, so basically, bottom line, that I love that Keone's version of that myth brings in the Star Council, right?
mhm.
The Star Council is what is saying, oh, we need you to be authentic to yourself.
Right.
Okay, so what came through in the channeling for me the other day was that it was also a star council speaking through me or to me
Wow.
or whatever, and no, through me, and they said um they were reminding us that scientifically it is the case that all elements in existence other than hydrogen and helium, so if we remember the periodic table of elements, from chemistry class, um, there are many, many, many elements in existence, and hydrogen and helium are the original two. Okay, so at the beginning of existence, there was hydrogen and then there was helium, and hydrogen and helium together made stars.
Mm.
I mean, long story short, and I'm not a scientist, so I'm doing this very long story, very, very short. But so that created stars, and then it's within the stars through the process of nuclear fusion that
Wow.
all of the other elements of the periodic table or of existence came into existence.
Mm.
So everything that makes up our bodies, everything that makes up the earth, everything that makes up everything throughout all of time and all of space, other than hydrogen and helium, is literally made in stars.
Yes.
So when we talk about our origins
Mhm.
and Mnemosyne and, remembering ourselves on the cellular level and even subatomic particle level, what the stars were saying, this council of stars speaking through me was saying, or this light, and it was saying, in this time of great remembering, it is absolutely crucial that if we feel drawn to reconnect with stars, we really need to listen
Yes.
because it is literally stars that are our origins,
Mm.
other than hydrogen and helium. Okay.
Mm.
And so when we reconnect with stars and with the cosmos in general, but in particular stars, they're like our mentors, they're our grandparents. And they know on this physiological level how to help us remember
Mm.
because they are us.
Yes.
We are them.
Yeah.
It's not woo-woo. It
Right.
is like really, 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 really a thing.
Yes.
I mean, maybe it's woo-woo also, not that woo-woo is bad, right?
Right.
It is just true.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
just ties in. It's,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. And it's from a lot of ancient cultures, I believe, like all over the world, and also cultures that still remember, that there's a lot that's said about our origins to the stars. They do help you remember. There's a lot of poetry, there's a lot of chants, there's a lot of things that, a lot of indigenous cultures talk about their origins to the
Mm,
stars. And so
mm,
I love that there's the scientific aspect to it that actually proves that, yeah, that is our origins.
yeah. And so like when we're out and we are feeling called by whatever, Antares or
Yes.
whatever, you know, we might think we're nuts, but no, no, we are not
Yeah.
actually. And I was saying also before we started recording that I definitely have these moments, especially in this day and age, and
Mhm.
we won't go down this road, but when the world has many distressing things happening,
Yeah.
and I can feel like, what am I doing spending my time focusing on stars, right? So
Mhm.
far away, and we've got all this crisis happening here. And that, I think there's some truth to that question, and it's an important question. But what they were saying, this Council of Stars was saying, we need you to truly remember, actually really remember who you are, because that's the only way that this planet is really going to be helped, saved, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Mhm.
And I can feel the stars. I feel them as grandparents, grandfathers,
Mhm.
grandmothers,
Mhm.
and they have this, like, the way I feel them is that they're I mean, they're ancient. They're literally ancient. They're incredibly wise, and I keep feeling them. It's so funny because I've been channeling them a lot lately,
Mhm.
and I just keep feeling them having this look on their face, like they're like, you guys are cute. Like, I mean, I don't know, I could be totally
Yeah.
projecting, but it's a very persistent feeling. Like they're like,
Yeah.
they can see so far beyond this moment,
Yeah.
in time.
Yeah.
I mean, they've seen how many eons of time.
Right.
And they're like, You guys are adorable.
Yeah, that's the word that came to my head. It's like, oh, you guys are so adorable.
Exactly. And but they're really and at the same time they also feel serious. Like, no,
Yeah. Oh,
this is a
totally.
serious deal. Like you
Yeah.
really do need to remember.
Yeah.
But they're here. They're really here helping
Yeah.
us because they've
Yeah.
they've they've got it. Like they
Oh,
know.
yeah,
You know.
totally. Yeah. I love that you wove that in because, it's like showing that just like how humans are related, we're also family with nature on this
Yeah.
planet. We're also
Yeah.
family to the stars in the heavens. So
Exactly.
we're all just this one really big family. And
Yeah.
I feel like we're coming back into remembrance of that.
I'm getting chills. Okay. So
Yes.
good. Okay. Keep going.
Okay. Okay. So let me share my screen again. Okay. Sharing my screen, bringing that back up. Okay. Okay, so now this is where I'm going to bring in the Mnemosyne and this other asteroid that she is aligning with, which is Hecate, or the goddess of the crossroads in Greek mythology. And so, due to their retrogrades, the asteroids Mnemosyne and Hecate are traveling together for most of the year this year. And they align exactly on August 18th, 2025 in tropical Scorpio, true sky Libra. And then they will align with the Great Attractor as well as the Galactic Center in like December 2025 and January 2026. So they're really in this very, initiatory part of the sky. And also when I was feeling into this, I felt like I started to remember when just like how I remembered how I kind of first met Mnemosyne's energy, I remembered how I first met Hecate's energy. And Hecate, I first became aware of her when I was starting to really get into my progress chart and studying that. And I was just at that, I had just started giving readings and I still hadn't fully accepted that I was an astrologer yet at all, but I was like going down that road. And so I just wanted to see where Hecate was in my progress chart. She was right exactly on my midheaven by progression.
Awesome.
Just entered in my 10th house. And so I was like, oh, interesting. So then I got this huge vision of Hecate's energy. So essentially, she is this torchbearer at the crossroads in like, on our journey or in the underworld, where we're coming up on a path and we're meeting her where she's, in her almost like triple goddess form, because she's also maiden mother and wise woman as well, holding the torches. And there's two dividing paths. We can choose this direction or choose this direction. And what I realized, it wasn't necessarily my focus on the paths that were kind of dividing in front of me of like living the life that I, was going back into academia and the one that I just was dragging my feet on, or going full tilt into the astrology realm and the realm of the stars. And when I really met her energy, it was the most non-judgmental energy I've ever met, where she was holding space for me to decide. And she had no judgment and completely neutral on my decision. And then the translation for me came, I was like, if the goddess of the crossroads doesn't judge my decisions, why do I judge my choices?
Wow. Mhm.
So the fact that the Hecate is aligning with Mnemosyne right now too is huge, because I feel like we're at this really critical point of continuing to forget or actually starting to wake up and remember. And if we're still in that part of our journey where, forgetting kind of just keeps happening, letting go of the judgment of that is
Yeah.
huge, because I feel like if we start to really judge our own paths to remembering, that actually amplifies the forgetting. It just starts to make
Beautiful.
it even bigger. So the fact that Hecate and Mnemosyne are together and traveling shows that, yeah, we're at a critical choice point. Like we get to remember or we get to forget and we get to consent into this. But also don't judge your wherever you're at on your path. Yeah.
Beautiful. And that forgetting is the part of the journey too.
Part of the journey to remembering. It's
Mhm.
even waking up that's like, oh, I have been forgetting. And yeah, and then also, bringing back into Keone's myth too that he shares. I actually started to interact with his myth in a really visceral way that he shared. And I actually started to weigh my own heart, where I was like, because I was starting to get to know myself on a really, really, really deep level. And now I've had this foundation of like, oh, I have come face to face with myself. And now I can actually, like, if I'm about to make a decision or I'm about to write something or about to do something, and it feels a little off or feels a little weird, I essentially envision myself holding my own heart and asking, would I recognize my own heart if I do it this way or if I do it this way?
That's exquisite.
Yes.
That's so touching.
So this is where we get to actually take part in the myth in real time. We don't have to wait until we've passed on to meet Ma'at or to meet these different like star councils. We can actually meet the self. And this is where we get to have this conversation and deepen our relationship to us and our road to authenticity.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah, it was yeah, a lot of epiphanies had to happen in order to get to that point. Yeah, and then also where they're at in the sky, where Hecate and Mnemosyne are in the sky, they will be aligning with the Great Attractor, and then also the galactic center, right? Which essentially is that part of the sky that leads right into the center of our Milky Way galaxy and also the center to the Laniakea supercluster. And I was really intrigued by this because the galactic center and also the Great Attractor, kind of like off to the side a bit, is kind of all in line with the Milky Way band that we can see in the sky. And and in a lot of cultures, the Milky Way has been seen as a river of some sort. And all of a sudden, where Mnemosyne and Hecate were at, where they're going to be aligning near at the end of the year, in this part of the sky, right in this river of the Milky Way, essentially turned the Milky Way into the river Lethe or the river Mnemosyne.
Oh, I was just about to say it's the river of remembering. Yeah, or
Yes.
forgetting. Or
And
forgetting.
so the river of forgetting is interesting. If we go back to the kind of like epiphany that I had, where the river Lethe and the river Mnemosyne are one and the same, and it all comes down to our consent. So do I consent to remember or do I consent to keep forgetting? And again, no judgment on what your answer is, because Hecate's there as well. She's very neutral in your decision. But essentially where they're at is also activating the zone of avoidance, which is what astronomers call the part of the sky where the Great Attractor resides in. And the zone of avoidance is actually this part of the sky that they can't see through with like the typical instrumentation because of all of the starlight and the dust and all of those things. So they had to get creative in order to even pierce that part of the sky to see the Great Attractor, which by the way, we still have no idea what the Great Attractor is. It's this gravitational anomaly in the center of the Laniakea supercluster, which is like this amalgamation of thousands of other galaxies, of which we are one. The Milky Way is also one of those. And so I feel like the zone of avoidance being connected into this part of the Milky Way is that part of the river Lethe. And if we actually stop running from the things that we're avoiding or the things that we continue to forget, and we start to come face to face with those and start to work through, again, our own zone of avoidances, our own river Lethes, then our Milky Way river Lethe turns into the river of remembrance. And now we can actually find ourselves not only at the heart of the Milky Way galaxy, but at the heart of the Laniakea supercluster, which means immeasurable heaven in Hawaiian.
Incredible.
So that was like all these epiphanies that I had. And then the last slide that I have is just like some important dates if you guys want to, if people want to tap in and feel into where Mnemosyne is. So March 4th, Mnemosyne station retrograde at 17 Scorpio in tropical astrology. She was still in Libra. June 24th, Mnemosyne will station direct at 3 Scorpio, which actually aligns her with Haumea and the Shapely Attractor, which is a very important part of the sky as well. And I thought it was interesting that she's aligning with Haumea too, because Haumea is like the Mother Earth goddess in Hawaiian culture. And Haumea was discovered at this certain time when a bunch of certain like further out bodies were starting to be named after indigenous deities.
Yeah.
And so this is like a call to come back into your ancient origins. And then August 18th, Mnemosyne and Hecate align exactly at 9 degrees Scorpio tropical. Then December 11th, Mnemosyne aligns with the Great Attractor, which is interesting because the sun also aligns with the Great Attractor once a year on December 5th. So Mnemosyne will also be at this kind of Stargate portal that the sun's activating with the galactic center and the Great Attractor. Mnemosyne's all in the mix with that. Then December 18th, the sun, Hecate, and the sun and Hecate align with the galactic center on the same day. And the sun aligns with the galactic center once a year, and Hecate is in the mix with that this year, which I think is really beautiful because the galactic center is the heart of the Milky Way. And so this is all about coming back into the authentic heart too, just in a really big cosmic sense. And then finally, January 18th, Mnemosyne will be conjunct the galactic center. So
Wow.
she's even taking us into the next year.
Amazing.
Okay, that's all of my my slides that I made. Thank you for yeah, letting me go
No,
through
it's
those.
so this might just be me. I don't know, but maybe we can go down this road
Yes.
if it's okay.
Mhm.
Because I'm going to guess it's not just me because it's very persistent. Could we take a look at Cygnus, etc.,
Mhm.
and its relationship with the Milky Way, and you tell everyone what you told me before we were recording,
Yes.
and the relationship of land and sky and
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
Earth,
Okay.
or I should say Earth and sky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I can bring up the stellarium.
Okay.
So everybody can see these constellations. This is just so cool. I feel like there's a thread that wants to come through when I add in this.
Yes. Perfect.
Um, anyway, okay. Hello. Wait, sorry. That
Okay.
didn't, there we go. Okay, so just for everybody. So here's Cygnus, the swan, right?
Mhm.
And when we let me make the Milky Way more. Nope, not that. Not that. Um, well, okay. Well, anyway, here
Yeah.
for people, here is the Milky Way.
Mhm.
And we can see Cygnus the Swan is flying right in line with our perspective of the Milky Way galaxy, right? You want to just take over and say,
Yeah.
yeah, go
Yeah,
for it. Go
perfect.
for it.
Okay, so Cygnus is a really important constellation. It's the Swan, and it's there's a really bright star in that constellation called Deneb, and Deneb is actually the brightest star that kind of demarcates the entry point into the Great Rift of the Milky Way.
Yeah.
And the Great Rift is like essentially this really kind of almost dark part of the Milky Way, if you actually can visibly see it in the sky. It's really pretty. I'm fascinated by it. And also, there is something called the Summer Triangle, which is an asterism, which essentially is like these three stars that rise really high in the summer sky in the northern hemisphere. So it's called the Summer Triangle. And
This,
those three stars are Vega in Lyra, Deneb in Cygnus, and Altair in Aquila. And so those three stars really essentially, to me, demarcated where the Great Rift of the Milky Way starts. So if I see the Summer Triangle at night in the summertime, then I know that I'm actually looking at the Great Rift of the Milky Way and the
yeah.
entry point to the Great Rift of the Milky Way.
Yeah, and just to say for people, if the sky isn't super, super dark, you
Mhm.
won't probably visually see
Yes.
the Milky Way, but you definitely will see those three stars.
Yes, you'll definitely see
Very bright.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Keep going.
and I love that you brought that in because I can't where I live, I can't see the Milky Way because of light pollution, but energetically I know what I'm looking at.
Wow.
And I even if I can't see it, I know that it's there.
Yeah.
And so I tap in that way. And then also in wayfinding, which is the Polynesian or actually Pacific Islander way of being able to navigate the open oceans in canoes without using instrumentation. They interacted with the stars in really fascinating ways because that's how they were able to navigate thousands of miles of open ocean is a relationship to the stars and also wind currents, water currents, migratory patterns of animals, all of the beautiful things. And so according to the Polynesian Voyaging Society, which is the society that got created in the 70s in Hawaii that was kind of like this resurgence of wayfinding thanks to this Micronesian master navigator from uh, Micronesia Islands. The they're the three stars that create the summer triangle are actually seen, if, according to the Polynesian Voyaging Society, as the three islands that demarcate the Polynesian Triangle. So essentially, when I'm looking at the summer triangle in the sky with these three stars, I'm also envisioning the three island nations essentially that's creating the Polynesian Triangle. And so the Polynesian Triangle, the islands that make that up is Hawaii in the north, and then you've got Rapa Nui and then Aotearoa in the southern hemisphere. And so because I'm a deep believer and a firm believer that whatever is happening in the cosmos is mirrored on Earth and vice versa, whatever is happening on Earth is mirrored in the cosmos. I had this epiphany one night that I was like, well, if the summer triangle demarcates the great rift of the Milky Way, then does the Polynesian triangle demarcate a great rift in the Earth? And so I just got on Google. I was like, is there a rift in the Polynesian triangle? And there is.
Ah!
I was really kind of like, my mind was blown a little bit by that. It's called the Tongan Trench, and I think it's actually one of the deepest trenches aside from the Marianas Trench in um, on the Earth. That it's like one of the deepest, and it's because it's called the Tongan Trench. It's located near the Tongan Islands. But it was kind of solidifying that belief that I have that the what happens in the sky is mirrored on Earth and vice versa. And this is kind of like proof of that, because I wouldn't have even thought to look for a trench in the Earth, because it was actually inspired. Me even looking at that was inspired by the Summer Triangle, just looking at it and knowing what it was marking in the Great Rift in the Milky Way. That's inspired the whole search to see if there was a connection on Earth.
Ugh. And that just takes me into yeah, okay. So could go on and
Yeah.
on and on and on. But yeah, so what I was saying to Natasha, and I'll say this again, is part of why I'm bringing this in is because yesterday I was with some of the people who are in my star course, and we were looking at this part of the sky, and we were actually looking at some things in their own chart in the beginning degrees of Capricorn, which is very, very near the center of I mean, it's very, very near the galactic center, right?
Right.
And I was looking at stellarium, and like this one person's Mercury is right about here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there's something calling to me. Like literally I could feel Cygnus calling to me as its head is pointed straight into the Milky Way. It's like, so it felt like anything going on the ecliptic. This red line is the ecliptic, which is the line. I'm not telling you this, I know you know this, but
Yeah.
for
Yes.
anybody
Yes.
listening who doesn't know this red line signifies where in the sky, from our perspective on Earth, the sun goes. And so most of the planets also follow, typically mostly-ish follow that red line too.
Yeah.
So our Mercury would typically be pretty close to this red line.
Yeah.
And Cygnus is not on the ecliptic in the slightest. It is not.
Yeah.
But it's like, but it's following, it's in the line of the Milky Way from our perspective, and it's literally, its head is headed straight at this part of the ecliptic, right?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's like there is some undeniable energy like pulling me from Cygnus to the center of our galaxy,
Yeah.
literally. Like there's,
Mm-hmm.
what is this relationship? It's like, what is going on?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, just everything you're saying is, it's like starting to put dots. I don't have all the dots. I mean, I don't know, do we ever have all the dots? But there's
Right.
something so important to me about connecting, not only connecting Libra with Virgo and Scorpius, but
Right.
also connecting all of the parts of the sky in with their relationship with each other, right?
Yes.
It's
Mm-hmm.
all connected.
Yeah. It's all connected.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
really powerful ways.
Yeah. And I thought it was always interesting that it seemed, if you follow Cygnus, that it goes right down in between like Ophiuchus, which is like the missing sign from tropical
Yes.
astrology. So it's like highlighting this part of the sky that's like we've omitted in some way, where it's like now there's a remembrance, though. If we're coming back into wholeness, then the sky also needs to come back into wholeness in our view and our perspective. Which again can mirror, if we're on a journey to wholeness within, then the sky starts to weave back together again too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All of the above.
All of it. Yeah.
All of it. Yeah. Um, Beautiful. Anything else calling to you?
No, thank you so much for, yeah, again, inviting me on to your channel again to have this conversation. And I feel like with the reason why Mnemosyne was so loud is because we're having a lot of these activations just with the planets too, around remembrance and remembering our origins. And I thought it was interesting near the end of last year that where I was having all of these epiphanies about my own origins, where I felt really, again, kind of like It's been kind of long where, because I'm mixed, so I felt, not super comfortable claiming that I'm certain, come from certain heritages because I don't feel like I was worthy enough. And so there was this huge healing opportunity that came with all of this remembrance of my origins. And
Mhm.
it was interesting because a lot of people that were close to me started to have similar things without me having to say what I was going through. So a lot of people seem to be having their own activations around where they come from too, around their own lineages. And so I thought it was interesting because this was all in association with like where Mnemosyne was at, but also where Mercury, I think, was like going retrograde. That was our video the first time, where
Yeah.
Mercury was going retrograde through Ophiuchus and back into Scorpius and True Sky. And then also I feel like that Mars opposition to Pluto that we're currently in right now. Mars like opposed Pluto 3 times, and I think the last one comes up like
Like, oh,
yeah, in a week.
yeah.
And so that actually takes us back into, I think, November, the first opposition, when Mars and Pluto opposed each other at Cancer, 29 Cancer and 29 Capricorn in tropical. And those are the two signs that are deeply connected to your lineage, your DNA, your bones, like, coming back to your own lineages. And then the other two oppositions that happen exactly will be in Leo and Aquarius, which to me I interpreted as, okay, we're getting all of these activations from like our ancient ancestors. And then with all of this information, now that it's in Leo and Aquarius, how can we actually start to incorporate that ancient knowledge in ways that really make sense in the modern times?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and this also goes down all kinds of roads, but I'll just say um that so you and I both are involved in this group that people maybe are starting to hear about, that Heather Ensworth and Jane Gleason White are holding. Uh, some of us gathering to really just help us all to remember the wholeness of the earth, I would say, right? Like the
Yeah.
north and south hemispheres as one earth.
Yeah.
And that when we're engaging with astrology, often we're really northern hemisphere centric, I guess you
Yes.
could say.
Hmm.
And so I think a lot of us are feeling more and more and more this kind of, I speak for myself. For me, it's this realization, wait a second, that makes no sense. That is so not cool. And
Yeah.
so if anybody hasn't heard the interview that Heather just did with Jane, I
Hmm.
highly recommend going and
Yeah.
go and watch that.
Yes.
And Heather also interviewed Natasha not that long ago, and
Right. Yeah. January. Hmm.
January. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's lots of
Yeah.
things, but um, um, yeah. So one of the many things I'm just observing is that even when we bring in the Polynesian islands and this all of the connection with the land, I can feel how, I mean, those three, correct me if I'm wrong, but they connect northern and southern hemisphere,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Even in and of themselves,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm. Yeah. They're literally connecting the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere because we've
Yeah.
got Hawaii in the northern hemisphere and the other two are in the southern hemisphere. Yeah.
Yes, right, exactly. And something I sit with, I'm someone who was born in Thailand, okay, and I grew up all over the world, and I've been in all parts of the globe. And so I'm sitting here going, and yet, yeah, so some of us, wherever we happen to be, is gonna almost certainly, unless we're precisely on the equator,
Yeah.
like we are in one hemisphere or another one
Hmm.
at any given moment.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there are a lot of us who uh, would maybe position ourselves as whole Earth, or like
Mm.
more tropical area of the globe or whatever.
Hmm.
And a lot of us contain, even ethnically, would contain,
Hmm.
not me, but lots
Hmm.
would contain many parts of the globe, right?
Right.
So there just feels like there's this whole calling to even drop into our bodies and really feel ourselves as Gaia, the totality of her, in
Hmm.
so many ways. And to honor, like, it feels like this is important to say something about, to honor that our own awakening in our own self is what is really is what that is the remembering, right? That it's
Yeah.
not really anybody out there telling us one perspective as the
Yeah.
truth. It's there. Gaia, I feel like, is waking back up, and the cosmos, which Gaia is part of,
Hmm.
is waking back up in literally in ourselves, like in our being.
Hmm.
Um, and so if we're going to pay attention to any one thing, it feels like it's that. It's like
Hmm.
the Mnemosyne to me is it's coming from inside out
Yes.
more than outside in. Yeah.
Yep. Yep,
Um,
exactly. I totally agree. And yeah, and the fact that, we have the North Node and the South Node also squaring the galactic center and the Great Attractor, and we've got Nemesyne and Hecate heading that way too. So, the when anything gets squared by the North Node or the South Node, or the paths of destiny, the karmic past, I see it as a choice point again. And we've also got Hecate kind of amplifying that as the goddess of the crossroads. So I really feel like we are at this critical choice point, and also we're also in this very liminal space right now too, a very in between space. And this is where we get to make friends with the in between, I believe, because sometimes we can get really, really trying to stay stuck in the past, or like not even that's might not how we see it, but because we've built this thing for so long and it's where we're more comfortable, we try to stay in the things that might be completing, or we try to catapult off into the new beginnings without fully completing the thing we just were leaving. And so this is where we get to, yeah, really kind of the way that I envision is like decorate our in between space, where we get to like make it friendly and make it beautiful. And that actually is something that comes from, there's a saying and also a practice from Samoan culture, which is called Teuleva, which means nurture the space in between. And it's this in between space that, again, doesn't disconnect. It's the connection between it all. And so I feel like this in between space is our connection between what we're letting go of, where we're presently at, and also what's still to come forward. So,
yes.
how can we really beautify and take care of this in between space while we're in it without trying to be somewhere else?
Truly honor it.
Yes.
Truly like live it up almost in a sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it into a temple, a living temple or
Yes.
something. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'll just throw in something that was coming to me about Hecate that so a couple of years ago I held a goddesses speak course
Mm,
where we learned about various goddesses, and then I channeled them for us each to be
yeah.
them. We each are all of it, right? So she was one of the goddesses. And when I channeled her, I had the most amazing, interesting experience personally,
Mhm.
which was certainly feeling her as, the torchbearer, whatever,
Right.
the crossroads of all of what you just said.
Yeah.
Um, and when I went really deep into her energy for me, another thing that popped alive for me was the reality that we are that ancientness and newness are the same thing, right?
Mm.
So like the
Mhm.
when you're talking about the in-between space, Hecate to me feels like she holds the reality of the totality of the continual cycle of life, that there is no actual, and you could say like destination.
Mhm. Mhm.
We
Mhm.
never arrive at the place.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's like we're always
Right.
in life,
Yeah.
and life is keeps going.
Yeah.
There's no like end of
Right.
it.
Right.
Um, and another part of that for me with her was um this moment of getting it. This is a couple of years ago, so I think it's a little not as much of an epiphany for me anymore, but in the moment it was like, wait, whoa, 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 I needed to feel that. This feeling of anything that is new is actually ancient. And this also goes back to the
Uh,
stars being our ancestors, right? That
yes.
that we are created of, anything that we are made of
Hmm.
hasn't ever not been here in a sense
Yeah.
since the beginning of creation.
Right.
Like there's nothing about us that's actually new. Like a
Ew.
newborn baby is
Hmm.
made of elements that were created in stars
Right. Yes.
billions of years ago.
Yes.
Every brand new baby is actually ancient,
Mm. Hmm.
literally.
Hmm.
And then everything that is ancient in any moment of creation is also new. So
Yes.
there's no
Yeah.
separation.
No separation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And I
love
felt,
that.
yeah, I felt Hecate really holding that reality, like, oh wow, you're this cute new little baby. But don't forget, so like the stars are like, you're so adorable. And
And
yet, don't forget,
yes.
actually though, when your body speaks to you, and this Mnemosyne, I'm getting chills, oh my God,
Yeah.
speaks to you, please don't discount that
Hmm.
because it is literal ancientness speaking
Yes.
as you. Like,
Mhm. Oh, I love that.
ah,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow.
both at the same time. Okay.
Wow, that's really incredible. And I love that, it's like one and the same,
Mm,
the meeting points. And actually I started to see that as where we have these divider lines, these invisible lines, even with just like the equator of the Earth or the celestial equator, or these
mm.
equators are saying, the definitions are usually that division point between northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. But to me, in my opinion, it's actually where they meet. And this is the connection. So the equator doesn't divide, it actually connects. So the equator connects the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere together. And the celestial equator, which is that, the equator of Earth projected out into space that separates the northern hemisphere sky from the southern hemisphere sky, actually is that connector point between both. That's where they merge.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe this is our last
Okay.
point.
Okay.
No, but this brings me back to something that you have talked about previously. I think maybe in our last video somewhere.
Mhm,
Uh, uh, can you just say the thing about how oceans are
mhm.
connectors, not dividers?
Yes.
Can you just throw
Yes.
that in there because
Yeah.
this
Okay.
really important. Yeah.
So in Pacific Islander cultures, this is what is on designated on a map as Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia. So all of the Pacific Islands that again are those division points on the map, but actually you take them out and they're all of these Polynesian islands or I'm sorry, all of these Pacific Islanders are all connected. And so the ancients of these peoples that were able to find their ways to these small little specks of land, thousands of miles and thousands of miles of open ocean, and just using again the stars and the winds and their observation skills and their chance and all of these really beautiful things that are deeply embodied. Um, the ancients that were able to go on canoes in order to find these islands, they didn't see the ocean as this body of water or this thing that disconnected all of the islands. It's actually the thing that connects it all because
Okay.
that's the thing they travel on in order to get to these different islands. And
Right.
so it's all interconnected and that's also just speaks to how interconnected all of the Pacific Islanders are too, because there's also in a lot of the communities, there's like a lot of division too sometimes in how they believe, everything's divided. But again, there's this coming back to remembrance though that I see really coming into play that people are remembering that actually all Pacific Islanders are connected. And that even connects back into ancient times when we're actually coming from the main continent when we came back into the islands in the Pacific. And then I think that just continues to branch out and ripple out where we're all just connected. Even if there's disconnection, it's actually the thing that connects in is honestly, I think if we think there's a divide, really pay attention to the thing that we think that's dividing it, because actually that might be the thing that's connecting us.
Exactly. Right. I mean, I'm just sitting here going, wait, this is the most ridiculous thing ever, actually, right? If there's this assumption that land is what's real, and
Mhm.
then ocean is the thing that divides the land,
Right,
that's based on the assumption that the oceans aren't a thing,
right,
or the oceans don't count,
right.
or the
Yes.
oceans aren't valuable. Are they
Yeah.
not there? Like, I don't understand. I'm like, wait, suddenly my brain is not
Yeah.
grasping
Like,
this.
wait.
A minute ago,
Yeah.
it seemed normal, but
Yes.
it's like, wait a second. The we will do other conversations
Yes.
about this, but the oceans are teeming with life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They have whales in them and dolphins and
Massive creatures. Yeah.
literally the biggest animals on the planet
Yeah.
live in the oceans,
Yeah.
which we somehow relegate to non-things.
Right. And even just looking at how these, the sea life are able to also migrate. And these are the things that connects them
Oh,
to all of the different oceans in the world, but really it's
Oh,
all one ocean.
wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, this is, yeah, there's
Yes.
so many things.
Yeah.
We have to stop somewhere.
Okay. Okay.
Amazing.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
if we were to bring this to some kind of closure or some kind of
Mhm.
blessing into the world, into existence.
Mhm.
Oh wait, sorry, I want to throw in this is
Yes.
okay, just I'll throw this part in and then we're
Okay. Okay.
closure. The other part I wanted to bring in there is if bringing this back to your parallel of what's happening here at Earth and in the sky,
Mhm.
I also want to throw out there just for us to start percolating on, right? If we haven't yet, like I'm in the beginning of percolating on this because it feels so important,
Mhm.
is that there are many, many, many traditions that actually don't only pay attention to the stars themselves, they pay attention to the space between the stars.
Mhm. Mhm.
Same. Like what happens when we switch that and then
Oh
start,
yeah.
yeah,
Definitely. And it's almost like, if the night sky, if we can envision the night sky and we see the points of light that are the stars, and then we can also see the black of the sky,
yeah,
kind of just like suspending the starlight, right? It's essentially a cosmic ocean, is
literally,
what I see.
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and that's actually how I envisioned when I first came across Teuleva, which is, honor the space or really take care of the space in between. What I was shown was the night sky and then to focus in on the actual spaces in between the stars. That's what the Va is. And the Va means space. And then Teuleva means the space in between.
Wow.
And so like even just honoring that.
Exactly. So we've
Yeah.
been taught to only pay attention to land, only pay attention to stars. For we've kind of forgotten about the fact that there are all these oceans which actually take up more of the space of Earth than
Right.
the land.
Yeah.
And we've forgotten about the space between the stars. What starts to happen when we literally just begin to remember
Hmm.
even this, that's so simple, right? And yet
Right.
it's so huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Perfectly. But
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So
Okay.
now bringing
Okay.
this to closure. Um, yeah, how do you feel called to, is there a, I don't know, something arising in your being that feels like,
Um, because we're really in this, again, a really liminal space in 2025. Honestly, I think it's the entire decade and moving forward is like into the 2030s is a really liminal space, because we're having all of these back-to-back things in astrology that just kind of show that we're in between multiple energies, just to really come back to where you're at now. Come
mm,
back into center, come back into your body, come back into the present moment, come back to the planet, come back to Earth.
mm, mm, mm.
And honestly, that's where we can make the most change is when we're actually present in the present moment. So even though we have like, these things squaring these things, we have Hecate conjunct Mnemosyne, we have all of these really big like things happening like astrologically. Really, we can just simplify it just by coming back to breath and coming back into your body and just coming back into the present moment.
Yeah. And I would add in there, and that's where I think we find the Nemazini. That's where
Yes.
we find the remembering. That's when we give it the opportunity to actually just,
Appear.
yeah,
We get to
exactly.
recognize it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Thank you so much. So, you and how people can find you and what
Mm.
you would like to invite people into.
Yes, yes. I do still offer personal readings, but I'm currently on a brief hiatus from giving readings. But if you are interested in receiving a personal reading, I invite you to go to my website and go to my contact page and just let me know that you would like to be added to a wait list that I have. And when readings resume, if you're on the wait list, I will send you an email letting you know that books are open again. And then also, I'm really excited. This has kind of been percolating. Well, actually, the concept of this thing that's been coming in has been percolating for the last 6 years. And now it's kind of coalescing into this thing that I get to create that I'm really excited about. And I'm creating a new series, written series on my newsletter on my Substack platform. And essentially, it's this weaving of all of these like rabbit holes that I've gone down the last like 6 years. That's weaving together astronomy, astrology, mythology, like from all kinds of different cultures, like all of these things that seem really separate in the information. Um, when it's all woven together, it like I would have these epiphanies, and I was like, I have to put this somewhere.
Yeah.
And so this kind of came as a download last year that I should actually start writing and creating a series for it on my Substack. So in addition to being able to like just write about whatever feels called to me with the current astrology, I will also be weaving in this particular series there too. So we'll include the link to sign up if you're interested for yeah, to be part of that journey. I'm really excited about it. So yeah.
Yay. Yay, yay, yay. Super wonderful. So exciting. I feel so, so much in the years and decades to come with you. And like, I'm just very excited to watch it unfold and, yeah, to keep weaving in these conversations together and with others. And it's so beautiful and such a gift to me. So thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yeah, and thank you so much again just for the invitation to come back and to be in conversation with you. And also thank you to Keone and Heather and all of these really beautiful connections that have happened. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and experience this with really cool people. So
Yay.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, to be continued. I know there will be many more conversations and
Yes.
and everybody watching and listening, please join in with your thoughts, your ahas, your questions. We
Yes.
obviously love to hear it. We're all in this together. And I love, love, love this invitation that you just shared. I would just name it again. Anytime we feel a sense of separation of any kind, maybe that's a great invitation for us to notice how it's actually the connector. Is that the way you put it?
Yes. That's actually the thing that's connecting. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. All right.
Thank you
Thank
so much.
you. See you all very soon.